Good morning, everyone. I am Almaz Nagash with the African Diaspora Network. Thank you and welcome for being with us this morning. This is a plan that we've had, my friend Thelma and I, for a long time, trying to figure out how do we bring our community together to discuss about issues that matter to women. And never can you do a program like this without the support of others in our network. And I am giving special thanks today to Latanya, Dr. Latanya Fred. Latanya, good morning, from CEO of Global Fund for Women, for making this possible. The effort it takes to put a Zoom, one can underestimate simply because we're doing it online, but the amount of work that Megan has to put on is just incredible. But this time we were lucky. We have been working with Wayne and also Thelma from SMENG, so it makes life a little bit easier. So we're very grateful for that partnership. I will just say that for those of you who are new to the African Diaspora Network, welcome. I will give the forum to Thelma shortly, but the ADN is an organization based in Santa Clara County, California, USA. We started 10 years ago just to bring people together. We are Africans and Friends of Africa. When we say that, we really literally mean that. We are absolutely the most diverse community you can ever find. And in that diversity, we find incredible energy and action. And that is what we love. And we're very happy that you're with us as well with this beautiful, wonderful energy. We have 4 programs that we're very proud of. The African Diaspora Investment Symposium, which we just finished 7 sessions, and that's been going on for 6 years, and I'm very proud of it. The second one is the Impact and Innovation Forum. This one that you're now a part of, we do 3 in Silicon Valley, and in the past we opened up Washington, DC and New York in 2018, but since we're not going to do that, we probably will end up doing another 5 or 6 of these for the rest of the year. And each of the sessions are themed and they're based on what ADN is focused on for right now, our strategic direction, focus on education, finance, connectivity, and healthcare. The third one is the Builders of Africa's Future, where we bring, we get nominated about 100 to 120 grassroots organizations, entrepreneurs from the continent. They come to Silicon Valley, showcase what they do, and hopefully we do the best we can to match them with investor. We just finished one and it was fully funded by the U.S. Africa Development Foundation, and very delighted to have today Brandy with us, another wonderful organization that supports the work we do. The last one is called Accelerating Black Leadership and Entrepreneurship. ABLE is a new innovation program that we have started to support Black leadership and entrepreneurship in the United States. Everyone who wants to be a part of that program would have to be based in the USA. We'll be very happy to share information with you as we go today. But it's also seed funded by Silicon Valley Community Foundation and fully funded by Build.com, a local corporation in Silicon Valley. I'm very, very thankful for that. Well, let me just say what we do is supported by our community, our board members, our executive leadership council, our champions, and of course the network of the African diaspora, but also the partnership we make is incredibly important. And before I go to Thelma, I just want to thank Megan and Wayne for all the hard work for making this possible, and welcome to everyone in the audience with us today. This is being created for a private meeting, but then we got the call from many people saying, can you please open it up so those of us who are able to come can join? And so we opened it up a few days ago, and so we're very happy to see several of you join us. I will have Thelma speak more about this shortly, but before we do that, Megan, do you want me to go to Latanya? Because I know Latanya has to go shortly. Latanya, do you have time until 9, or are you leaving sooner?
No, I would have to leave sooner, but I still have a few minutes. So if Thelma wants to know, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so wonderful. Then Latanya, Thelma, why don't you say hello, and then I will send it back to Latanya.
Okay. Well, over here it's late afternoon, so good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to be collaborating with ADN, with Almaz and Megan to put this together. I am the managing partner of SMENG. SMENG is an impact investing platform in Nigeria that focuses on investing in women through a gender lens. We have two funds for women, a bottom of the pyramid fund and a top of the pyramid fund for women's businesses that are looking to scale. And we also have Nigeria's first non-tech all women's accelerator. I know talking to people who are in Silicon Valley, when I said non-tech, you probably go, what's that? But non-tech is also important for us here. All women's accelerator. And to date, we've graduated over 200 women's businesses from the accelerator. We're very excited to say last week, we launched an e-commerce platform for women. We have some of our partners here that I must recognize. I'm going to start with the Honorable Commissioner for Women's Affairs here in Lagos State. Lagos is the largest city in all of Africa, so it's really strategic that they're partners of ours. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Adebisi Ajayi, our partners, the Bank of Industry, Nigeria's DFI, they're here, and also Access Bank. Mrs. Ayodele Ajelade, she's the group head for emerging markets. They have all come on board to help us create in Nigeria an e-commerce platform that can withstand any platform across the world. Of course, my sister Latanya, so glad to see you here. Thank you for supporting. But that is your nature. You're very supportive of women's work and Global Fund for Women as well. So why have Almaz and I done this? When Almaz and I start talking, we talk for hours and we talk about all the things that we must change. So I'm not going to be surprised if one day I look in the papers and I see that Almaz is the president of the United States, because she's always doing something. And Almaz, it is possible. I mean, anything is possible. But, we immediately gravitated to each other. We recognized, the way we both are just to get things done and nothing can stand in our way. And we started to talk about gender lens investing and about how there was an opportunity for Africans to shape the narrative of gender lens investing in this formative stage, and not have the same cycle that normally happens to Africa where the thing is fully shapen, then everyone just says Africa should jump on board. And I was very happy to find an ally in Almaz who just shares the values that, in the 21st century, the African narrative is vital to the global narrative. And so we've been talking about doing this for so long. When I was in Silicon Valley last year at her amazing meeting, if you haven't been to ADN's meetings, you need to go when COVID goes away. But it just broadened the possibilities for us. Every time I speak on a panel and people say, well, Ayo's last name is Olojede. Sorry, I pronounced it wrongly. But Nigerians were particular about our names. Every time I go to a meeting and people say to me, well, we haven't really heard of SMENG, I'm like, with all the work that we're doing. And so we need partners and friends to help raise our voices. And that's what ADN is about. ADN amplifies the work that Africans are doing on the continent, but very, really, really importantly, ADN provides strategic alliances. And so we're very happy to host this. And we want to hear from other voices how we drive this agenda together. I think it's symbolic that the Global Fund for Women is supporting this, because they've been trying to do gender lens investing before it was called gender lens investing. But how do we connect all the dots is why we're coming together today. So I'm here to learn. I'm here to challenge everyone that this is not just a talking shop. The reason why we wanted a small meeting was that we wanted really tangible outcomes that we can all hold each other accountable on. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thelma. This is a family meeting, and so I'm just saying that if we can have one Thelma and one Latanya and one of each of you everywhere, I think the world will be better. But I think in the crux of what Thelma is talking about is there are so many people coming out with the name of Africa to create genderless investing. But the question is, who is behind that investing and who's leading this money? How is it really trickling down or is being invested in the local community where I know that Thelma is trying to make a difference? So if we take anything out today, let's listen to what our speakers talk about, what we can do. And then we from the diaspora, we need not to be shy from investing in each other. That is exactly what ADN is trying to do, amplifying your work, simply because I do believe deep inside, by amplifying the work that each one of us do, and by whatever it is that ADN can do to amplify the work of those people we believe in, the communities in Africa or the communities in which we live in as diasporans will benefit from it. That I believe. And so I am so grateful. With that, I'm going to ask Latanya to start the day, and then we'll go to our other speakers shortly. Latanya, thank you for all that you do. Yes, the Global Fund for Women called it what it is a long time ago, but then of course we come up with new names. So now it's genderless investing. That's fine too.
We have to keep it fresh. There's no problem. Thank you, Almaz, for this invitation. I mean, ADN is close to my heart. There's something very important about a name. Thelma was just saying Nigerians are particular about their name. And I think, when you talk about, first of all, when you first hear about the African Diaspora Network, you're like, that's exactly what we need. And for so many different reasons. And Thelma at SME-NG, it's good to be here with you today and all of your colleagues. Just so we can figure out how to bounce back after COVID-19, right? How to position ourselves in a moment when it is really important that those most affected and most marginalized from this pandemic are able to invest in themselves so that they can see a brighter future as we move forward. And it's so important. Global Fund for Women, of course, will partner with you because this is entirely what we're about, right? So we're funding bold gender justice movements. And, and our thinking is that if we create this meaningful change, that it will last beyond our lifetimes, and that this is the movements that we need to focus on. And it has to come from grassroots, right? And organizations like yours represent the 5,000 organizations that we fund in over 176 countries. And we've looked at the research and we've seen that, that broad-based social movements are one of the most effective mechanisms to create the long-term social transformation that we're looking for. These are the systemic issues that we have to get at. We hear about these big movements like Big Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Ni Una Menos, and the resources and funding that are required to strengthen them and sustain them. It is absolutely fundamental that we do that if we do want to see this lasting change. So then COVID, right? COVID hit us. It turned all of our lives upside down, quite frankly. It was so true for all of the partners we work with in so many places around the world. Yes, it showed, and you hear people talk about the systemic inequities that are happening within COVID and now with the vaccine. But these are inequalities that existed way before COVID came around, right? The marginalization of women, girls, and in particular African communities are commonplace. And so when we think about the vulnerability of the groups that have been facing increased domestic violence, restrictions on their health care and rights, and for all of us, a heightened caregiving burden, we have to now emphasize how we're going to come out of this. So policies and public health efforts have not really addressed the issues that we're talking about. And we know from past crisis and work that, disaster relief typically neglects the specific needs of women, girls, and again, particularly African communities. So we have increased our own crisis funding at Global Fund for Women to be able to respond to the needs during the pandemic. And we've been helping women and girls who are setting up domestic violence shelter in place. So people who have to go home have some place to go if their homes are not accommodating or there may be violent. We've been working to increase health services, in particular, for women who have to stay at home and can't get out to a clinic. We've been doubling down, of course, on racial justice in response to police brutality in this country, but, in many other countries around the world. And we've been creating opportunities for information and making of PPEs, all of these things which are very, very important. But when it gets down to the brass tactics, we know that only 1% of gender equality funding gets to grassroots women's organizations. And that's where the trouble is, really. So giving to women of color is actually, incredibly low. So we talk about 1% of the funding going to women's organizations. And so if you break that down to how many women of color, you're talking about less than like 0.05% of $67 billion annually is given to women's organizations of color. And so even with that small piece of the pie for gender equality funding, grassroots feminist groups are getting, I think, little funding, but doing the most work. And, and I have to hold both of you, Almaz and Thelma, up as doing so much with so little. The little pieces of funding that you're getting, you're really showing up in this space, particularly for women, but for all of our community, right? So today I want to talk about what's important. And as we come out of this pandemic, and I know, Thelma, you mentioned it, something that I have been reading called solution privilege. This is the privilege of expecting easy and instant solutions that would align with one's worldview and not challenge one's privilege. So often these amazing programs are put together in, New York, San Francisco, London, or other centers around the world. And then what they do is exactly what she said. They say, okay, well, we've created the strategy now. You guys do it, you deliver it, you implement it. And so then the expectation is that somewhere in Africa, someone and some program is going to deliver on all of these solutions that were actually built, maybe in Washington, D.C. And so there's no relevance to the problems that are really meant to address. And quite frankly, so many women, so many communities already know how to address the problem. They already understand the solutions and they are already working on them. And so, it's not for us to say our strategy has to say, how do you invest more in women? Our strategy has to say, well, what do women need and how can we give them more for them to do what they need to do to come out of these situations of which they see a need for change? That's a mind switch. That's very difficult. But I do think that we have this opportunity with COVID-19 to be able to do that. I think we've been able now to have those conversations about, well, here are the solutions in our community, in our country that we know work and we know that we have to address. Are you going to support us? And we should not be asking groups to come and, fill out an RFP or proposals and things like that. We should be having relationships with groups that are doing this work. So when they need the funding, that we are there when they're most able to utilize that funding. We just came out of Generation Equality. I think today is the last day. I've had the privilege of working with UN Women on this momentous moment. I mean, we're 25, 26 years past the Beijing Platform of Action. And, and many of 25 years ago, we were all in China and it was a wonderful experience for all the women to come together to rally really on achieving the human rights, and the whole statement of women's rights or human rights was achieved there. And we came up with this great document that really spelled out what it looks like to respect women and for women to be able to achieve their goals in life. And it was ratified by 189 nations. But we are just so far. And when you read that statement, if you get a chance to go back and read the Beijing Platform of Action, it is so well written. It is so important what's inside that document. And now 25 years later, we're still trying to catalyze new and better investments and commitments toward that same document, because we are not at all close to what we had hoped 25 years ago. But it all starts with a vision, right? And that's what I think this meeting is today. The leadership here, Almaz and Thelma, and in collaboration with so many of your partners around the world, brings us to a point where we can start thinking for ourselves, where we can, as you said, Almaz, start investing in ourselves and start offering opportunities to those that we think voices need to be heard. For this particular conference, we went out and really looked at groups that are not being heard. We funded the Ability Trust to be able, they're out of Kenya, to be able to go to the conference and actually have had a few speaking spaces. As you know, they are, or some of you may not know, but they work with women who are specially abled. So, you know, they have now had a real impact on making sure at this conference that they have not just translators and signers, but all kind of opportunities to include people who might not have otherwise been there. And these voices are going to be crucial because these are the voices we don't hear. And you have to start there. You have to start by bringing those to the forefront who are not being heard. We're especially excited because we're also involved in the what they call the Action Coalition, and we're involved in the one with Women Tech and Innovation. And this is kind of all that we're talking about. You know, how we've been relying on digital tools since COVID has happened is just like boomed, right? But we're also seeing that movement building is actually happening online now in ways that it had not been in the past. So many people are launching apps to address gender-based violence. They're creating spaces for online convening. And I mean, you guys, Thelma, you might have even seen this. There's so many now spaces for women of color to be able to look at investments over a long period of time and how they build their opportunities in that space. So I am convinced that all of that you're doing, Almaz, all that you're doing, Thelma, is going to be significant in closing this gap on funding. I am thrilled to be here with you today. And I'm sorry I can't stay for all of the meeting, but I know the work that you do. And I'm terribly, terribly disappointed that I can't hear some of the ideas that your panelists and your speakers and your participants are going to be able to talk about on women's entrepreneurship, how we accelerate the continent's recovery from the pandemic, and how we accelerate really the position and opportunities that women can have to actually lead us as we come out. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you. And always, again, much love. And anything I can do, please let me know.
Thank you, Latanya, for your leadership, your love and support. We are so grateful. And just so you know, Global Fund for Women has been part of ADN staff early on, 10 years ago. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to send it. Thank you so much, Latanya. Thank you. I'm going to send it to my friend Thelma. You go, and that floor is yours.
Thank you, Almaz. Thank you, Latanya. And definitely, you know, Global Fund for Women is really critical to this conversation. But another critical actor are, you know, the whole subsect of the African governments and what they can do to advance gender lens investing or to be part of this conversation. And that's where, I mean, ADN is about partnerships, SMENG is about partnerships as well. That's why we're really pleased to have the Honorable Commissioner for Women's Affairs in Lagos State, Honorable Bolaji Dada. Honorable Dada is leading a ministry that trains 30,000 women entrepreneurs every single year. Honorable Commissioner, we welcome you. And I'd like to ask you, can you, through your ministry, you do all this amazing work and then COVID happens. Can you just lay the stage for us by telling us what are the key challenges that you've observed that women entrepreneurs face? Of course, there's no cookie cutter way of looking at the whole continent, but certainly some of what you've seen will be instructive for other parts of the continent as well. So please just tell us what are the key challenges that you've observed from your vantage point as a policymaker? Okay, did we lose the Honorable Commissioner? I saw her when she came in. Okay, this is the other thing we have to deal with on the continent, internet.
Maybe she is muted. I'm trying to see.
Okay.
Thelma, I don't see her. She may have dropped off.
She may have dropped, so we will get her back. But let's move ahead and let me invite, since we're talking about entrepreneurs, let me invite one of the entrepreneurs that we've invited, Ejiro Japa. Ejiro is, when I first met Ejiro, she told me that she makes granola, and that her intention was to compete with Kellogg's. And I thought, wow, that's such a small dream. I mean, that's nothing. You want to compete with Kellogg's? But she said, yes, why can't an African firm led by a woman do this? And then she sent me some of the granola to taste, and I was convinced that she could do what she had said. So I'm going to introduce Ejiro Jakpa. And Ejiro, can you, the same question, can you just tell us, as an entrepreneur doing this work, what are the core challenges that you've had as a result of COVID, and maybe some steps that you've taken to recover? Thank you.
Volume.
You're muted, Ejiro.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to Thelma for hand-holding me through a large part of this journey. And like I said to you, when I got the email to speak today, I was deeply humbled and honored to be chosen to speak, to represent African women entrepreneurs. So once again, my name is Ejiro Jakpa. Most people call me EJ, and CEO, founder, the Knickknacks company. So we manufacture healthy foods and snacks. Basically, our core product, the granola, just behind me, was launched about 5 years ago with just about the equivalent of $50. And since then, we have sold about 70,000 packs, which is just under 6 tons of granola in Nigeria. In the process of doing that, we've created jobs, we've strengthened supply chain partnerships, and we currently have a distribution network in about 5 states of Nigeria, spanning across 60 stores, including major pharmacies and supermarket chains. So yes, 2020, the pandemic. It was quite interesting, very interesting for us. I didn't know we would still be here, because in the midst of the pandemic, we actually marked 5 years in business. And it's interesting to also point out that when we started 5 years ago, we started this business in the midst of a financial crisis as well in Nigeria. The economy was kind of at the bottom then. Well, we thought it was the bottom. Now we realize that, things could get worse. The dollar is almost 500 naira to a dollar. But anyway, last year's pandemic was quite interesting. We already had experience considering when we started the business. So, but what we found peculiar this time was that a lot of the stores where we stocked our products in were either closed, because of course, during the lockdown, the first reaction of the government was to shut down pretty much everywhere. And then as the days went by, they gradually started opening up the stores with a lot of restrictions. But what we found out that in the first few weeks, a lot of the stores we stocked our stuff at were closed, and they had reduced foot traffic. When stores open, a lot of people, because they didn't understand what the virus was about, were still scared to go into the stores to buy things. So that greatly affected our demand for the granola. It affected our production as well. At a point in time, we stopped producing for almost 2 weeks. However, just before the lockdown, we already started hearing chatter that there might be a lockdown based on what had been going on. So we had already started putting things in place. For example, one of the things we did to mitigate was to bulk buy. So we took out the big chunk of funds to purchase raw materials in bulk, which was great, because one of the things that happened after the pandemic or after the lockdown was we found that the same things we bought, for example, say $5, when the lockdown was over, we were paying about the equivalent of $15 for it. So in some cases, prices doubled, tripled, some even went up to about 500%. But because we had stock, which we had got at a lower price before the lockdown, we were able to weather, some of that storm. We still experience a lot of other challenges. For example, at a point in time, I believe it was for 2 months, we had to reduce staff salaries by about 50%. So rather than laying everyone off or closing because we didn't know what was happening, I mean, there was loads of talk of the government helping us or giving us money, but there was nothing coming in. So we had a meeting with the staff and told them, look, this is the situation. And they were very cooperative. They were very fine with it, very understanding. And they were happy to go home with 50%. I mean, they're working from home anyway. But unfortunately, we had to lay off a member of staff when things got, a little bit tight. And then part of the things we also had to do, because our cash flow was restricted, was we had to renegotiate terms with some of our suppliers, even with the landlord for rent, because our rent was due. I remember it was on the 1st of April, which means it's due tomorrow, actually. But it was right in the middle of, the whole thing. And he wanted his rent like now. And I had to, just have a meeting with him. We would pay you, but can we stagger payments and can we delay payments? Basically the training I've learned also from the She Works Here Accelerator and different accelerators I've been on helped me to be able to present my case to my vendor partners and, just negotiate better terms. Another expense that we had to deal with was the expense of the PPE, that's the personal protective equipment. So we had to spend extra money getting face masks, hand washes, sanitizers, setting up stations, just everything. What we didn't plan to buy or to spend money on, we had to spend money doing that. And of course, I think that period we had petrol reduced, the petrol price was increased, it was decreased, and then eventually it went up. Anyway, the cost of transportation, it went up drastically. It affected the bottom line as well. And that basically just got us to sit down and look inwards on how we could resolve, on how we could not only give our customers a product that is affordable, healthy, and something that wouldn't break the bank, but
maybe
we also
Adrian,
had to look for a product that would.
Maybe you can just tell us how you have recovered. You've really laid the challenge well. Maybe you can just tell us how the recovery is going now, just like in 1 minute, how the recovery is going. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I was just getting into that. So the recovery is going fine because what we had to do was we had to introduce a new brand, which is the peanut butter. And the reason why we did that was because it's a single ingredient that is locally sourced in Nigeria, as opposed to the granola, which has about 7 to 10 different ingredients that we had to source from different people. So one of the things that we had to do to mitigate, from all the challenges in the pandemic was to launch a single brand or single 1 or 2 competitions, which we won. And they had some funds attached to it. So we won a couple of thousands for that. So that obviously helped the business. So that's one of the things I'm going to talk about later on in how Africans in diaspora could also help us. So we were able to bounce back with funding from business competitions that we entered. We're also able to bounce back by, to an extent, pivoting to another product that was easy to source for the material. It wasn't too expensive and something that was healthy and would go well with all our customers. That's it.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And I really am pleased that you're standing or sitting in front of your product so that everyone can see the quality branding. And everyone has to take my word for it that it tastes really, really good. She used to send me some free packs, but I haven't received any recently. I'm just saying, Ejiro. We're going to move to listen to one of the development finance institutions here on the continent. And I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Esther Mariam Dassano. She's the coordinator of AFAWA. AFAWA is the Gender Lens Fund based at the African Development Bank. And I remember saying to Esther Dassano that she has one of the best but most challenging jobs in Africa, because every woman believes that that money is for her. So Esther, can you just talk to us about Gender Lens investing from how you see it, and vis-a-vis COVID? Because COVID, everyone talks about COVID being an opportunity for a reset. And so how can Gender Lens investing be that reset? And then maybe just some insights as to what the African Development Bank is doing currently. Esther, please.
Thank you, Thelma and Almaz. Of course, really nice to be here and to be given this opportunity to participate. And of course, to be with Thelma, she's such a mover and a shaker. And she reminds me how this job that I have is not only so critical, but probably one where everybody is expecting money. So it's always very interesting. Said lead the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, which is an initiative of the African Development Bank to increase access to finance for women entrepreneurs and close the financial gap of 42 billion that exists for women. And today with COVID, there are times when we wonder whether that financial gap is not even wider today than it was just a year ago. However, all that be as it may, what we have seen with COVID-19 today is that gender lens investing is even more critical than it was just a few years ago. And that it's not only through one channel, it's through different channels that we're going to be able to increase access to finance for women entrepreneurs. It's going to be via different mechanisms. So the likes of SMENG and the work that Thelma is doing, through funds is one way. Leveraging financial institutions, whether we're talking about commercial banks, whether we're talking about mezzofinance institutions, is another way. And all of these different mechanisms play a very different role. And it's just really important and critical for women SMEs on the continent to understand what these different roles are and to know how to, if you will, target these institutions or who to approach and when. Right? So the role that Thelma, for example, plays with SMENG is very different than the role that Access Bank plays with its W initiative, or that an organization like Kofina and Finel play, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in this COVID area, there is one thing that we are clear about is the fact that the knowledge, the financial knowledge at the level of the women SMEs themselves is critical, and equipping them to be able to approach these financial institutions properly is equally as important. So what is it that we're doing at the African Development Bank through the AFAWA program is along these lines. We have basically set ourselves across 3 pillars to be able to unlock up to $5 billion worth of financing to women SMEs on the continent in the next 5 years. And the first pillar for us is ensuring that we have made the funds available. Now, I need to caveat that, because making the funds available doesn't mean you walk into a financial today and you're like, okay, the African Development Bank has put money here. Where do I get my share and how do I get it? It doesn't work that way. The bank invests in via lines of credit, trade finance, and equity. in 3 different financial institutions, so funds or commercial banks, and to some degree, mesofinance institutions. But we've also developed what we called the AFAWA Guarantee for Growth program, which is a risk-sharing mechanism, because both now and before, even prior to COVID, women entrepreneurs told us that one of the reasons why they can't access the financing is because they don't have the collateral. And this, we're realizing that it's at the level of the funds or at the levels of the commercial banks as well. And so we developed a mechanism today that de-risks the segment, which means that women entrepreneurs who are clients of these funds, of these FIs, should be able to access loans without having to meet the stringent collateral requirements that existed before, because we're taking on that risk. And we're taking on that risk because we have seen, we have noticed, we have experienced that women repay their loans. So we're basing ourselves on that. So you repay your loan, and because you repay your loan, we're telling financial institutions we will take the risk. And in the event that they do not pay, we will cover these loans to different terms that are, if you will, negotiated with. The second, as I said, skills are really important. So we want to ensure that as we're moving forward with financial institutions, that they understand the segment of women enterprises, the risks that women enterprises face, and how they differ from those that are led by men, and how do you take those risks into account to create and to develop the right types of financial products, and also ensure that women entrepreneurs have the capacity to have that conversation and that relationship with the banks as well, and can also develop bankable projects, bankable, financeable projects that are here for the long run, because nobody wants to fund something that will fail in a year or two, right? And then the third and last point for us is ensuring that we're working with government entities, regulators, to make sure that the rules are also inclusive, right? So if guarantees, again, or the types of guarantees that are required of women are properties and properties alone, which very often is what we don't have. And if we have, we don't want to give that anyway, right? How do we ensure that we're coming up with different types of policies that enhances, first of all, the ability of all gender lens investors to do things in an innovative manner and differently, right? But also ensures that women are at the end of the day able to access. So very quickly, this is what we're doing. And I think moving forward, now that we're in this COVID era, it is even more critical to be able to put all these different mechanisms on the market. Now back to you.
Thank you, Esther. Can I just say, as I hand over to Almaz, please put your questions in the chat. Can you just also, I saw some, Olive says she's dialing in from Canada. I've counted Canada, Nigeria, Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa. Let's know where you're dialing in from today. This is a conversation with, the world, essentially. Almaz, please come in.
So good. Thank you. That was wonderful, Esther. Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to just go to Brandy, Chief of Staff and Director of External Affairs at USADF. Brandy, where are you? Are you here?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Liz.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. And USADF provides support to women and men grassroots entrepreneurs in Africa, and supports everyone that is doing a big difference and impact in the continent. So it's really wonderful to have you, and maybe you can share with us what the vision and the next steps are for USADF, and how can we collaborate and work with you as well.
Sure, happy to do so. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Brandy James with the U.S. African Development Foundation. I'm dialing in from Washington, D.C. I've had the pleasure to live in various African countries for about 8 years and have had the pleasure of seeing some of the solutions that our keynote speaker, Latanya, mentioned, and that we are grateful and happy to be supporting at USADF. So USADF, we're an independent US government agency established by Congress exclusively to invest in African grassroots organizations, entrepreneurs, and SMEs. So we really pride ourselves in being able to assist the missing middle, the women and youth organizations and enterprises that are beyond the level of needing microfinance support, but also perhaps don't have the assets they would need to qualify for larger financing opportunities. So that's really where we see ourselves fitting into this space and this conversation and some of our previous speakers mentioned before. So we really focus on African solutions in unserved and underserved communities, particularly for women and youth. And we're mostly focused on countries in the Sahel, the Great Lakes, and the Horn of Africa regions, and mostly focused on addressing food insecurity, unemployment, and energy poverty. And again, this is through African-led solutions that we are looking to do this. And I do know that these issues disproportionately affect women and girls.
But it's my pleasure now to welcome the Honorable Commissioner for Women's Affairs, Honorable Bolaji Dada. Honorable Commissioner, I had asked a question and then realized you had dropped off. I hope you are here. The question, I saw you a minute ago, so I hope you are here. I had asked you train 30,000 women in the ministry every year, women entrepreneurs. What challenges as a policymaker have you seen that are peculiar to with the impact of COVID that would be instructive for other countries? Okay, Megan just told me she has dropped off again. Okay, so
connection is hard. Connection.
It is really terrible.
Yes. So it's okay. Connection is hard.
Yes, I don't see her.
Do you want to speak a little bit, Thelma, about what the commissioner is doing to help you, and then we can really begin to engage on Q&A, and then we talk about action steps.
Absolutely. I hope I do her justice. But you know, one of the reasons why Almaz and I thought it was important to have a representative of an African state with us here is, you know, we have to have allies on gender lens investing across different sectors. And so, like I said, you know, we work with Access Bank, Almaz works with different corporates as well over in the US. We work with DFIs, we work with the Bank of Industry, USADF like Almaz. You know, we're trying to work with AFDB, and we harass Esther quite a bit. But then, you know, working with governments is often something that we all shy from. But we can't do this work of changing the narrative without policymakers who put laws in place that facilitate gender lens investing. So, for example, it's particularly difficult in Nigeria for women to register businesses. And as I'm sure Adriel will testify, there's a certain, I think in the US, it is, what you have as the Food and Drug Administration, right? So before you put a product in the supermarket, you have to have that certification. Most women cannot afford, in Nigeria it's called NAFDAC. Most women entrepreneurs cannot afford to have that certification. And that certification is essentially the difference between your business being a mom and pop shop or your business being in all the retail chains. And so when we talk about gender lens investing in Africa, we have to put on a lens that recognizes that institutional strengthening is as important as actual capital. And that's what many investors don't want to do. They just want to give the money, right? And say, you know, what kind of returns do I have? But if you really are interested in building strong entrepreneurs in Africa, you have to also do the work of building the woman herself and the company that she's trying to run. And this is what working with the ministry does. It helps us to get policymakers to interrogate the laws that exist. The ease of doing business in Nigeria is very, very difficult. I mean, when I go to Rwanda and they talk about registering a business in a day in Rwanda, I'm like, are we even in the same continent? You know, so these are things that policymakers can help us with if they're part of the conversation. And that's why it's important that we bring them in. We normally exclude them, but in Africa, we can't do that. They have to be part of this conversation. And Almaz and I are convinced that, as we build this African narrative of gender lens investing, African lawmakers, African members of the executive need to come in. Unfortunately, she's had problems today, but that's essentially what she would have talked about, because they've partnered with us to float our e-commerce platform. And what the ministry is going to do is put on board 5,000 women onto the e-commerce platform every year. So in a nutshell, Almaz, that's what she would have talked about. Over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I see my friend Abba, who has been working also on women's leadership. Thank you, Abba, for sharing what you're saying. Yes, I think what we're going to, what Thelma was saying is very important. No matter how much we all try to do what we can do to help the local communities in whichever country or community we live in, unless there is a policy change that enables the communities to do the kind of work that they need to do, the investment that they need, it won't happen. So I really think maybe one of the discussion I would like to see happen before we end this program is there are some people here. I know Nancy and others are Nancy Reynolds. I know you don't like to be called on, but she's such an incredible woman leader. She has been advocating through ADN in her own way directly to make sure that multilateral agencies don't give the money to just big entities and forget the local communities that really support the very people that this money is supposed to support. That's exactly what Thelma is talking about. So the most frustrating aspect of this big, huge, mega money that goes to the continent is, at the end of the day, the local communities don't see it. So the vision for ADN and the partnership we have with Thelma and others in the continent, but very few people actually, because when you make partnerships, it's not easy. I think the first thing is, can you really align your mission and vision? And Thelma and I, we do. And one of the thing that we need to do is support those that we believe in, we work with. So for ADN, so let's say that we continue to collaborate with Emmy and with Thelma and the community she serves. Then what is it that we can do to enable them, but even for us, for ADN, to advocate for multilateral agencies and foundations to ensure that those very people that need to get the money do have access to the money. And then again, this is not going to happen because we're talking about it. Policy change must happen. They must happen locally. We cannot make the change happen from the US. But here's what we can do as diasporans and Friends of Africa. We can be very proactive on how we advocate, on how we would like our money to be invested. When I say invested, I'm not saying that you get your ROI. I'm talking about social investment that you do into the communities that we want to support in Africa. Your business investment, it's a different story, but I think this is what we're talking about. Investment is really helping the local communities to survive, not to survive, but to thrive. And to do that, we need to have direct investment in these communities. And that is going to take a long time, but luckily there are these opportunities. And maybe Thelma, can you talk a little bit about the new program that you just launched, and how can the diaspora be a part of it to make sure that the funding or the platform in itself is enabling even for us to be able to give that whatever we wish to give to these women or invest in their work?
Thank you, Almaz. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge someone I invited here, Sean Flynn. Sean, he has a really exciting podcast over there in Silicon Valley. And I had said to him, Almaz, that he's one of the people that needs to amplify all the work that ADN is doing and all the work that we're trying to do with women. I think, we talk about he for she's, men who support all the work that women are trying to do, especially with investing. So Sean, thank you for joining and listening to the issues. And we look forward to how we can take this to a broader audience. For us, what COVID did was just really exacerbates the digital gender divide that exists across the continent. On average, the cost of women setting up e-commerce businesses in Nigeria is about $600 to $800. Now, anywhere else in the world, that is okay, but not, I can tell you that across Eritrea, Nigeria, that is a massive amount of money, and women cannot afford to do that. And so when everyone was talking about how to help women recover, because we are a gender lens investor, we thought, let's put our money where our mouth is and invest in a platform that will help women migrate their businesses onto an e-commerce platform that they either do not pay for or they pay next to nothing for. So we're looking at them paying 50 cents, the equivalent of 50 cents. So look at the difference, 50 cents and $600 to just be on the platform, because people don't respect anything that's free, right? And so we've done this, we launched it last week, and we're really excited to do this because we knew that if we didn't do something, it would be business as usual when when COVID is over and everybody wants to go back to their lives. It will just be, well, this is what we should do for Africa or Nigeria or wherever. But we felt, let's introduce a game changer and let people engage with us around what we see as the solution to helping women become resilient after the pandemic. And that's why all the partners I've acknowledged today are really important, because if we didn't have Access Bank, one of the largest banks in Nigeria with 45 million customers saying we'll be part of this, we'll onboard our customers onto the platform. If we didn't have the Bank of Industry, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and others, we wouldn't be able to do this because it takes, and this is one of the reasons why, Almaz and I were like, we need to be real in this call. The average time it takes for an international investor to approve funding is between 9 months to 18 months. Now, do we just fold our arms and and the women are just waiting for support? And we've just said, you know what, we're not going to do that. Why don't we look for local and continental partners to help us get these things started? And when the international community decides to come on board, they come on board seeing that African Resources have actually started something. And that is what is most convincing, when they see that we are actually putting our own investment in it, rather than what people have felt in the past, where Africa just waits for this savior mentality. And I liked how, Latanya put it, solutions, what did she call it? Solutions privilege, We need to change that. And we think that with the platform, we've done that. We have so many friends of Africa who are already coming on board with us and saying, we want to be part of this, either on the capacity building end or on the access to capital end. And, of course, we welcome a lot more, but even people that are not given capital can actually be part of raising awareness of what we do. Because ADN, I know that when Almaz was having the physical meetings and she would put people on stage, there would always be this light bulb moment. The people in the room saying, you mean all of this is going on in Africa? And, it's amazing how that still exists in the 21st century, that people don't know all the innovation, all the dynamism that exists on the continent. And I think, Almaz, if there's one thing everyone on this call can help do, is part of the COVID recovery is to amplify the voices of people like Ejiro and others who are literally, helping local farmers, building businesses, in a scrappy way, but are developing products that are of international standards. I'll stop there.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. Thank you, Thelma. Actually, what you just said is very important. Let's do this as an action item on ADN's side. One of the things we do, and we do this very well simply because we believe in the individuals that we bring to our network. We have a system, and thanks to Megan now, we are pretty much able to amplify the work of women, African leaders, and our entrepreneurs. So maybe one of the things that Thelma we can do jointly is to begin to amplify the work of these women entrepreneurs. And of course, we will start with what we have, but I think that this is very critical in terms of seeing change, because I think people will not be able to change if they don't know what Ejiro is doing. And by her sharing her story, so of course, we always need funding to make these things workable, but we will find a way to do it. And I want to say before we wrap up and come up to action steps, this is something that ADN can do, and we'll work with Thelma to share with you the story of this woman. So that way, when you invest, you know who you're investing into, or who you are giving your money. Even it's not just even money, mentoring, providing access to resources and opportunities. These things don't come easy for many of us, even here in the United States. To get the right mentor, the right sponsor is not always easy. But if we can align our values and begin to support these women, I think that is very, very critical. But we have an opportunity to do that now that we have this partnership with the SME-NG and the communities they serve. I was just going to ask Brandy, this is what USADF does. I mean, literally, that is what happened to us when we went to you last year, seeking for funding for the Builders of Africa's Future. The answer wasn't no, but the question was, who are they? Are they grassroots? It was the most beautiful questions that we've received from USADF to open our heads. Oh my God, yeah, that is true. Are they grassroots organization in the continent providing services back to the community? Does what they do make a difference in the community? And I think we proved that. And of course, all of them got the funding, the seed funding from USADF, which we are very, very thankful. And we're going to grow that path. We have now 42 in our pipeline, but that's going to grow eventually to a different number. But I was going to ask you, Brandy, what can we do between what SME-NG is doing and ADN to continue to invest in women? And what can we do to help you? And because that's not just the other way around. It's not what we need from USADF. It's also what can we contribute to the funders?
No, thank you for that question. So one of the things I would say is that what you're doing already is you're introducing, like we just did for EJ, actually providing opportunities for women to tell their stories as entrepreneurs and on their journeys to successful entrepreneurship. And so when we learn of groups and organizations that we can support at the grassroots level from ADN or from Thelma, and she works here in NG. That's particularly helpful for us because we do have our processes on the ground through our local staff to identify some of these enterprises that we can support. And then we do also have our call for proposals and applications, but it is helpful that there's already a pipeline in the works that we can feed into. And we also like to be that pipeline for larger funders and lenders as well, particularly within the US government. So whether that's the DFC or the MCC, we also can play that role, introducing them to grassroots and social entrepreneurs that are ready for investment, ready, particularly as we look at our lens through the US government and how we as a US government agency have to feed into our priorities around what the Biden administration is doing, the congressional priorities that we also have to consider. We're also looking at investments around in women as part of our efforts from peace and security. If you look at how the funding gap impacts between men and women and the opportunities that they have, it really does impact whether a country is in conflict and what type of dynamics that they have on the ground. So we look at these investments strategically as ways to feed into larger efforts around peace and security. And so anything that you're doing already to help us identify these organizations is helpful to us.
Thank you, Brandy. Thelma, we are coming to a close, and so I wanted to see how would you like us to take some actions. I know I've seen some in the chat. There's some really great messages that we're reading, but collectively, what would we like to take? And so let's just share our intention and our follow-up plans so that we can continue this conversation. And the other thing is, I really would like all of you in this meeting to note that we will be sharing details of the presentation, the recording and all, but also some action steps that we can take collectively and individually, but also be present, because without your presence, these things will not go anywhere. Thelma?
Thank you, Almaz. I think what we would like to do is, I'm nervous that everyone is so quiet. I've seen Professor Okome in the audience as well. She's one of the leaders of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, and an excellent academic. And she's just quiet. So I'm nervous now, because when the professor is in the room, I wonder how she's scoring our event. But Professor Okome and others, can you just give us recommendations in the chat about things that we should take forward on this conversation? Almaz and I have said this is not a one-off, this is just the first. We want this to be a collective thing where we bring different players periodically together to talk about the African narrative of gender lens investing, and with the work Almaz is doing, also to crowd in Africans in the diaspora, friends of Africa around this topic. So as we wind down and we talk about the next steps, kindly put your recommendations in the chat. We promise that we will take them seriously and see how we can incorporate them. As your question to us as SMENG, I'll say this, I should have said this in the start. As big as Nigeria is, over 200 million people, there are only 4 gender lens investors, self-identified gender lens investors. It is a sector that is extremely difficult for women to break in. If the data is that across the world, women-led venture firms only get 2% of the capital. If that's the case in the US, I think in Africa it might be 0.000000001, if at all. And women are still, passed through, the different levels of scrutiny when you manage funds. And that is one of the first things that I think ADF can help facilitate, a community, a diaspora community of female-led fund managers. And that would be so powerful, where we can talk about the challenges we face and how, as a pressure group, a collective, we can change the practices of development finance institutions and also other types of investors across the world. That would be my one big takeaway, because if we don't change the face of how capital moves, we'll be back here again just talking about the challenges next year.
That is so true, so true. Okay. So if Thelma says what she said, it's because she is so capable of doing it, because she also has incredible support behind her. And I think we in the diaspora, remember, we remit the most to the continent. And Nigeria gets the most of it. And I'm always saying, why not? Nigeria has 200 million plus people, so it makes sense. But the question is, remittances, as we know, is not scalable, because we're sending remittances to one family member, to one friend, to one community partner, or just a neighbor. I think what I'm always asking, and I will continue to ask this until I figure out how we make it happen. We need to figure out, with the diasporans, how to invest outside of our families. I'm not saying stop sending money to your family. You must, we all do. And that's really what sustains many people. Now I'm talking about, if there is an opportunity from the savings that we have, can we also put a fraction of that money, a portion of that money, to invest in other communities or enterprises? I know there is a lot of different investment happening within one country, but I think one of the most important things that Africa has is its diaspora, and us, the ability for the diaspora to think outside of our own community and for the greater good of the continent. Then we have to really step away and say, can I do this intra-diaspora collaboration within the continent? Can an Eritrean and Nigerian work together? Of course, you can see it. We can. can Ghanaian and Nigerian work together? They do all the time. It happens within the continent. I'm asking now, we do this within the diaspora. We're getting there. We still have a long way to go, but we need to get away from this ethnocentric way of looking at things and start to really look at it, Africa as one home. Not easy. It's a complex thing. We're talking about 54 to 55 countries, but still we have an opportunity to do that. That would be one area where ADN can also contribute to this dialogue. But I am with Thelma. We need to invest in each other. We need to get away from the scarcity model and start looking at the abundance model, because the pie is as big as what we want, how much we want to cut, how many pieces we want to cut from it. It's not that small. You can do it small if you want to, but you can also make it bigger so that everyone has a piece of it. So I'm very, very grateful to each and every one of you. Thelma, really great to partner. I know I'm always watchful of time at ADN. We said we will get you out of here at 9:10, but it's 9:20. We had a great music, great conversation, incredible speakers, everyone committed to what is important to the continent and the communities where we live. I'm also wonderfully happy to continue this partnership with my friend Thelma. I'm always saying, why do we have to reinvent the wheel when someone else knows how to do it so well? The best thing to do is to build on that. We have so many different programs and initiatives that we can all support, but I think it's also sometimes very important to really go a little bit deeper, and we look forward to going much deeper with this partnership with Thelma as MENG to support the woman. Let's start in Nigeria, and then we will go all the way out. But we have to start somewhere, and this is a great beginning. Again, thank you. And Thelma, anything that you have to add to this? But I also want to say, before I give it to Thelma, we are going to share the video, a brief summary and action steps. If anybody wants us to share anything about what we're talking about, what you have specific things to do, either email it directly to Megan or Thelma, or just send email to us, or put it in the chat, and we will include it into the summary and action report. Thank you, everyone, our speakers, our attendees, and of course our own team, Megan and Wayne and everyone, for being with us. Thelma, you're a great friend, so I'll give you do the last word. I am done here.
Thank you so much, Almaz. We said we'll make it short and sweet, and I think we hope we've done that. This was just the first conversation to get this started, so that the stage is set and for us to have more of these conversations. I've seen recommendations. How do we support first-time women fund managers? Exactly. I think it was Lieb, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. That is exactly one of the concrete things that we should do. Look for ways to support first-time women fund managers. For Professor Okome, I mean, telling the story is critical. Storytelling changes people's perspectives of the continent. Like, if people keep saying African women are a risky portfolio to invest in, then it's no wonder that capital flows to African women is minimal. So we must get a lot of these success stories together. Almaz, you've done this with a Nigerian group today. I think also look at how we do it with a Kenyan group, Eritrean group, South African group, because they exist. They literally are there, and they're not visible because no one is amplifying their voices. And so it's a privilege for us to have done this with ADN. We look forward to, Almaz and I are, we are workaholics, so we will be sending out a lot more things that we're going to be doing together, concrete things. Thank you all so much, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. We will be sharing the summary and action report, the video. Randy, Marime, and everyone, Esther, thank you so much for being with us. And I know that we were not able to get the commissioner, but I'm sure we will include her message into the action and reports so that everyone can see it. To my friends in Nigeria, Kenya, I actually counted, we have about 5 to 7 specific countries was the largest number, and of course, Nigeria, USA, Kenya. We have someone from Zimbabwe, Canada. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you. Thank you, everybody.
Free, 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 oh, so long ago. There was a South African warrior. He was put in prison because he was fighting for peace. Because he fighting for freedom. Freedom for his people. Hey, hey. He was put in prison for so long. But you know that there's an end to everything. When the time came, he was the greatest warrior on the land. And his people march on the street and singing aloud and say, ooh, ooh, free, free, free Nelson Mandela. Now, at this time of our days, we are having the same problem in this country. While some people are suppressed, they have no freedom. They are beaten, and women have no respect. It's so silly to me. So when we say free Nelson Mandela, it means free everyone. Free the women who have been suppressed for years and ages. As you know, Black matters, Black life matters. So is Asian lives, so is Spanish lives, and the Indian life. Every life matters. Humanity has no place in my heart. If you hate somebody else, this is my story. Free everyone, have everyone. We are.
Thank you, Paul. Oh my goodness, thank you. Please join me
Thank you.
in thanking Paul for making every time we get together just so as beautiful as it can be. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you, and especially the last thing you've said, which we are all reflecting on why people do what they do. And we stand for love and peace and respect for each other. So thank you so much for starting us with that beautiful last song. Thank you, Pope. We'll see you soon. Have a wonderful day.